PDP presidential campaign in Nasarawa State, North Central Nigeria. President Jonathan lays emphasis on exploration of solid minerals.
Independent National Electoral Commission optimistic of credible elections next month in spite of delays in the distribution and collection of permanent voters' cards.
Federal government gives credit to sound financial management reforms which cut down effects of cash flow challenges in the country.
Counting down to the February 14th elections, can the media beat its chest for upholding the ethics of the profession?
All right, this is perhaps about the second time Good Morning Nigeria will be discussing this important issue. And the reason is very simple. Now, the role of the media is all-encompassing, and they are considered a very critical stakeholder in shaping the practical electoral process. Now, the failure or apparent complacence of the media in practicing free, fair, and objective journalism has, in some countries, in the world, particularly African nations, put many nations many steps backwards.
Well, Claire, a number of African countries were plunged into crisis, which then degenerated into full-scale war because of biased reportage of the electoral process in those countries. Now, the case of Kenya in 2007 readily comes to mind. It was reported that the manner in which the media in Kenya at the time reported the elections contributed to the violence that erupted in that country.
Indeed, Kingsley, in one of the fora on election reportage, a professor of social science in one of the private universities in Nigeria did refer to the role of the media in the incidents that happened in Kenya that you just talked about in 2007 and that of Netherlands in 2002. And there are many other examples. But coming back home again, the violence in 2011 election may not have been directly linked to the media, but can they be totally exonerated?
Well, as the fourth estate of the realm, the media is crucial to the electoral process. And perhaps the most critical role of the media is that of affecting the consciousness of the electorate through the content of their publications and broadcast materials. Now, besides setting the agenda for political office holders, or political office seekers rather, the media are also expected to act as critical gatekeepers. And I mean, carrying out this pretty onerous task, the media is expected to exhibit fairness, credibility, accuracy, and objectivity. All of these are enshrined, of course, in the various codes, both soft laws and the Nigerian Broadcasting Code, for instance, as amended, the Nigerian Press Council Act, as well as the Code of Conduct for Professional Journalists. And in the particular case of elections, there is also a code for election coverage for Nigerian journalists.
Indeed. Unfortunately, Kingsley, many people have raised concern that the media have relegated their roles, especially that of gatekeepers, to politicians. Now, in just 2 weeks from now, the general elections will hold. Can't the media be praised or vilified for their role in the electoral process so far? Can they overcome seemingly indispensable obstacles to free, fair, and objective reporting of elections in Nigeria?
Well, Claire, those are very pertinent questions, and the questions, of course, arise from the growing concerns about the practice of journalism in this season. And there are two areas of principal concern, the reportage as well as the advertorials. And we have seen public umbrage at a couple of adverts that have either been published or broadcast in the course of the election area.
All right, Kingsley, in NTA's build-up to next month's elections, Good Morning Nigeria had earlier in the month hosted some media practitioners on the conduct of the media in the electoral process. We revisit the issue today again, as I said earlier on, with more practitioners making their contributions. I am Claire Adelabu Abdurrazak. The pleasure is always ours having you join us again on the program.
In addition to the media practitioners that Good Morning Nigeria hosted earlier in the month, we also had regulators of the industry who the NBC was around, the APCON also was available, in addition to, of course, veteran journalists who themselves are not directly in practice at the moment. But we hope to fully explore the amplitude of these issues in the course of the program this morning. My name is Kingsley Osadolo, and I join Claire in welcoming you to this edition. We urge you to stay tuned for the next couple of hours, and you'll find out our regulars as well, newspaper review, business, and arts and entertainment, as well as sports. I was just going to say that about an hour or so, Serena Williams qualified for the semi-finals of the Australian Open. Her sister, unfortunately.
Don't worry, I'll give you the gist about all these tennis results coming in from Kingsley. But the early morning news is right now, and we joined the new studio where, of course, Rhoda Obo is standing by. Rhoda, over to you.
Thank you, Claire. Hello, a very warm welcome. Thank you for joining us. The need to take advantage of the abundant solid minerals in Nasarawa State to diversify Nigeria's economy topped issues at the PDP presidential campaign rally in Lafia, Nasarawa State capital. President Jonathan at the rally promised to turn Nasarawa into a true home of solid minerals if re-elected into office.
That we must make sure that the solid minerals in this state are exploited. That means that Nasarawa State will be one of the central areas that the federal government will want to work with.
The infrastructure development that Mr. President is putting in place, as I speak, we have brought back in Nigeria 3,500 kilometers of rail line that is working in Nigeria. Facts, facts, and facts, not promises. A lot of people are making promises. In your own case, we have seen the effect and the result of the transformation agenda.
Meanwhile, as President Goodluck Jonathan seeks the support of the people of Nasarawa State for his re-election, the development and improved well-being of the people of Nigeria remains not negotiable for his administration. President Jonathan stated this when he paid homage to the Emir of Lafia in his palace.
So federal government must work with Nasarawa State. Nasarawa State is one of the states that must be working hand in hand with the federal government, with the FCT administration, so that the people of this great state will not suffer the pains of population explosion, but will not enjoy the resources that follow with the federal capital city development. So we must work together in terms of health facilities, in terms of schools, in terms of road infrastructure, in terms of power, and of course, especially in terms of security.
Your Royal Majesty, we need your prayers. We need your special blessings. We need your support and those of your people. We pray that as you have promised, God will help us for you to fulfill, for us to come and say thank you after the election.
The Afenifere, a Yoruba socio-political organization, has endorsed President Jonathan for second and last term in office as president. The leader of the Afenifere, Chief Reuben, made this known in his Akure home when president and his campaign organization visited the elder statesman. The elder statesman, who spoke through the secretary of the Afenifere, Bashorun Arugbofa, said the group has watched with keen interest and seen the efforts of the Jonathan-led administration in critical areas of national security, restructuring of the country, and the genuineness in the transformation agenda, in particular the courage to convene a national conference. The Afenifere, in the presence of leaders like Chief Olufalaye and Chief Adebanjo, therefore asked Nigerians to join hands in allowing President Jonathan continue in office.
We therefore want to say it loud and clear that after considering so many things, and with the hope that we will carry out some of these ideas, especially the the report of the confab, we see you as the best option for now to continue as the president of our dear country and consequently call on well-meaning Nigerians to join us. You are heartily welcome.
Expressed deep appreciation to the Afenifere for their trust reposed on him and promised not to let all Nigerians down in the task of nation building. He assured Afenifere that the report of the National Conference will be a top priority in the next dispensation.
With your adoption today, and urging other Nigerians to support Afenifere, to encourage us, God willing, as we go through, that will be the first assignment that we'll take. And we need to conclude that in the first 12 months of our second term. Because if it gets too close to election, other issues will begin to come up. We will work very hard to make sure that we conclude those issues before we talk about any election. Where we need to rewrite the constitution, to amend the constitution, and any other law will be done before we get close to the election.
In spite of difficulties we've encountered, we have managed to ensure that democracy continues to thrive. We have changed government from one civilian to another 4 times. That's a record in Nigeria. We are not too proud of it because we want to do more. And the fact that we have come to the conclusion that this country needs meaningful leadership, leadership that can understand what is happening above and what is happening below.
President Jonathan is expected to address the people of Ondo State in continuation of the presidential campaign later today. Now, the Advanced Progress Democrats ACD says it will mobilize votes for President Goodluck Jonathan, having adopted him as its presidential candidate for the forthcoming presidential elections. The party made the pledge at a press briefing in Abuja.
With all our collective efforts, we will return Mr. President to office come 14th February 2015 by the grace of God.
If we vote him back, he will complete most of his projects that he's still handling.
Our women in ACD, they have come in mass and said that they will vote for Jonathan.
That we are going to mobilize all our youth structures. We are going to deliver him.
Meanwhile, the People's Democratic Movement, PDM, has adopted the APC presidential candidate General Muhammadu Buhari as its candidate in the 2015 general election. National Chairman of PDM, Bashiru Ibrahim, stated this during a visit to General Buhari in Abuja.
Also noted that the party had registered close to 6 million members, both manually and online. We are an independent political party. We still have candidates running for election with other positions, and we are supporting our candidates. But in the critical office that matters,
infrastructure, power, number one. Then the roads, the railways, the amount of jobs to create in farming and mining.
In the meantime, the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, says despite the seeming delays in distribution of permanent voters' cards, the Commission is determined to conduct a credible election next month. Chairman of INEC, Professor Tahiru Jega, gave the assurance at a meeting with political parties in Abuja.
We would like to continue to appeal to all stakeholders to join hands with us in addressing these challenges. In particular, urging Nigerians to be patient with the delays in the distribution of the cards, but to also remain resolute in coming out to collect their permanent voters' card.
The European Union Election Observation Mission says it will deploy 90 observers to the forthcoming general elections in Nigeria. The chief observer of the EU Observation Mission, Saniego Fisa, stated this while briefing journalists in Abuja.
For the first time in the history of the European missions today that we came before to follow up the primaries. Then that gives us a very full and comprehensive panorama, I would say, about the election.
Supervising Minister of Information, Dr. Nuruddin Mohammed, led Directors General of Parastatals and agencies under the Federal Ministry of Information for the 2015 budget defense of the House of Representatives. NTA's Director General, Shola Omole, at the event restated the authority's commitment to discharge its set goals effectively.
Interaction. And interaction doesn't mean it has to be conclusive. Discussions are ongoing. We are open to dialogue, we are open to consultation.
We're in the process of practically rebuilding NTA from the ground up. And we have over 100 stations across the country. If those stations are all going to be broadcasting 21st century television, we've got to spend some money to retrofit them, to bring them in line with 21st century broadcasting. Because in the overall scheme of things, NTA is crucial to the success of the transformation agenda of Mr. President.
The federal government says sound financial management reforms have reduced the effect of cash flow challenges in the country. This was the submission of the Minister of State for Finance, Bashiru Yuguda, as Treasury workers converge in Abuja to brainstorm on ways to addressing the challenges of dwindling revenue for improved performance of the nation's economy.
Working towards diversification of the economy, because we believe Nigeria should not be dependent on one source of revenue.
As a matter of necessity, we all must key in, because once the revenue is dwindling, then of course we look for alternative ways. And these are issues we have been continually addressing at the FAC level too.
And that's the news. It's back to Claire and Kingsley. And you know, Claire, talking about accurate reporting, you know, one thing I think is training and retraining of political correspondents, I think, is very, very, very important, looking at the fact that politics itself has become very dynamic lately.
Rhoda, training it's needed. Of course, like you heard DG there, to, of course, catch up with the 21st century broadcasting, and of course the dynamics in reporting, you must be trained. But I think the challenges facing journalists is far much more than training, Kingsley.
Well, that's true. I mean, training is crucial, but the essence of what the DG was saying has to do with funding. Mm-hmm. And, you know, we are discussing the cash crunch on account of dwindling oil prices. And the Ministry of Information and its parastatals were at the National Assembly yesterday for its budget defense, for the budget defense. A number of matters arising from that session were the issues that the DG and the supervising minister addressed. Namely, there's a cash crunch, and yet you need to function in the 21st century. So going forward, we do hope that there will be creative ways of making funds available for this to happen. All right, now this is... We thank Rhoda Albo for the news. We're taking a short return. It will be time for business news.
The time has come once more for us to make the right choice. We did it before, we can do it again. Let us lay aside our differences and think about Nigeria. Let us vote for Good Luck Jonathan again.
Vote Good Luck Jonathan and Namadi Sambo for President and Vice President 2015. Vote PDP.
This message is brought to you courtesy Transformation Ambassadors of Nigeria. Down for One Vision, Nigeria.
This is not just another year.
This is my year. It's the year I become a better me. I am going to do things I have never done before. I am going to do ordinary things in extraordinary ways. And everyday things in new ways. I will break my records and set new ones. This is 2015, the year of a better me with internet solutions that enhance my lifestyle. MTN, everywhere you go.
Even family fun time is no sweat at all. That's because I use Dettol Re-Energize. It protects me and my family from everyday germs. With bursts of orange citrus, I end my day the way I started. Re-Energize.
All right, inside business news coming up next. Federal government dismisses allegations of increased rate of the jobless in Nigeria in the last 1 year, just as experts are advocating more measures to step up the economy. Here is Leah Katung-Babatunde.
Hello and welcome to Good Morning Nigeria Business News. The federal government has debunked insinuations that the rate of unemployment has increased in the country. Minister of State for Finance, Ambassador Bashir Yuguda, says contrary to speculations by participants at the just concluded World Economic Forum in Davos, the federal government has been able to create over 1 million direct formal jobs in the past year, as well as many more seasonal jobs.
What we have been doing is quarterly we release the number of jobs created. And in the last 4 quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 in 2014, we created 1.6 million jobs. It is recorded.
On informal jobs created, the minister says the data is not fully captured and government will continue to create an enabling environment for job creation.
And in the process of also talking about the informal sector, we have been doing everything possible as a government to help and strengthen that, to streamline them and bring them at par with the formal sector, to help them strengthen their capacity for recording, to help them also access funds.
Yuguda maintains that data released by the National Bureau of Statistics are credible and verifiable to all those in doubt. Nigeria has remained the preferred destination for investors as the largest economy in Africa. The Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian Stock Exchange, Oscar Oyema, at the just concluded World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, spoke on the success story of Nigeria's economy.
These challenges that we're facing are quite isolated, in isolated pockets. And those pockets are not necessarily the geographies that drive African economy. And so you have to look at it from that perspective. I believe there is a risk, but the risk is not as big as we're trying to make it out to be.
This portrays Nigeria's strategic importance to the global economy and resilience despite global economic shocks and oil gluts. Now, the Securities and Exchange Commission (SEC) is focused on provision of adequate investors' education to both retail and institutional entities to develop and deepen the nation's capital market as well as improve the level of domestic investment. Speaking in Abuja when he received members of the Fund Managers Association of Nigeria (FMAN), Acting Director General of the Securities and Exchange Commission Dr. Munir Gwarzo said one of the strategies of the new management was to embark on a huge public enlightenment program with other stakeholders to educate the investing public.
Emphasize on the fact that we need to, as much as possible, be on the same page with them. You can't have a very vibrant market without a very strong regulator. You also cannot have a vibrant market without a fit and proper operator in the market.
He said SEC will partner with other self-regulatory organizations and the media for market development. The Nigerian Stock Exchange made a rebound Tuesday to see the all-share index rise by 0.27%. Up next is a graphic summary of closing figures from the Nigerian Stock Exchange. That's business for now. Good morning, Nigeria would continue.
Thank you very much there. And next for us now is Newspaper Review. Bayo Atoyobe, the Good Morning Nigeria Newspaper Reviewer, is right here with us for today's edition. Bayo, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you, Kingsley. Good morning, Nigeria.
Okay, we begin with the Nation newspaper. Virtually all the papers that I have political stories, so we'll just do a quick run through. The lead story of the Nation newspaper, the Nation says, party chiefs close to blows over elections shift plot. That's the Nation newspaper. And two riders to that says, we'll take the best decision, says Jega. Jega, of course, is INEC chairman. And INEC distributes 42.7 million PVCs. And there is a sidebar to that story, a voters card distribution update on the front page of the Nation. Another story that says, military deploys drones to battle Boko Haram and sets horse flag in Monguno. Now, also on the front page there, Kano Hisba arrests 12 over gay wedding, and Shatima appoints advisors. Now, other stories headlined on the front page of the Nation, just above the name flag. APC urges judiciary to stand firm against post-shift plot, and EU laments failure to implement recommendations. Now, quickly, we go over to the Nigerian pilot. The Nigerian pilot has, below the name flag, hold APC responsible for threat to peace. That's according to the federal government. Details are on page 4. And February polls. Now, beware of leader with born-to-rule mentality. Is if he wants. Details on page 6. Lead story, the headline says, no going back on PVCs. INEC insists, and has a rider. Says TVCs will aid fraudulent practices. TVCs, of course, refers to temporary voters' cards. Details to be found on page 4. Campaign, that's the key of second lead story. Jonathan hits Port Harcourt today. And then also on the front page there, IBB's children campaign for PDP in Niger, and Nigerians in Washington mobilize for president. Afenifere meets Jonathan, endorses him. And APC breached rules on fundraising platform. That's according to the NCC. APC breached rules on fundraising platform, says the NCC. National Mirror is the next paper. APC unveils plot to scuttle February polls. That's the lead story. Nobody can stop us, says INEC. That's the first rider. Second rider says certificate. My critics will remain in court. That's according to Buhari. Details to be found on flag. A business story there. CBN may stop forex support for rice importation and others. And also Al-Makura warns troublemakers. Details on page 12. Why we threatened to short airspace? That's according to PCA. Details on page 6. EU force electoral officials and France at non-implementation. Nigerians in US drum up support for Jonathan. Details on page 50. Daily Times. Daily Times is next. The lead story says, Afenifere endorses Jonathan. And it has a quote there. Says, two riders to that, of course. Says, APC won't implement confab report. Another rider has a kicker. Garba Shehu, who says we won't. That's in response to that. Now, restructuring is what we let us, which restructuring, according to the quote on the front page there, is what will let us out of jail and allow us to develop at our own pace. The man who will do it is the one we are supporting, not the man who will kill it. Now, a number of other headlines on the front page there. No going back on election dates. That's INEC and parties. Details on page 6. And then federal government pays Ghana $10 million over botched gas deal. The union is next. The union says Nigerians in the U.S. rally for Jonathan. Then it has a rider, Afenifere also. Nigerians in America defy rain and snow to rally support for President Goodluck Jonathan. That's the rider to that headline. Also on the front page there, budget, zero allocation to MOI stalls hearing. Zero allocation to MOI stalls hearing. MOI, that's the Ministry of Information, obviously, says zero allocation stalls hearing. It was supposed to be a hearing, actually. It was supposed to be a budget defense. Now, on the front page of the union also, IBB's children drum support for PDP. That's on page 4. Now, Total boosts gas delivery to Alauji power plant. Details on page 29. And sports there, ex-Eagles goalkeeper Wilfred Agbonabare dies. He was 48. Stories in further detail can be found on page 52. Now, Blueprint is basically the same stories that I read earlier. And so, Claire, you have some other papers.
All right. I'll start up with The Guardian. And The Guardian leads with INEC. Others meet over PVC's IDPs. It has a rider. Group urges elections in victims' camps. And APC alleges fresh plot to scuttle polls. And a picture story right there in the middle of the paper on the front page, 70 years after the Holocaust. And the caption there says, activists and pupils of Ojodu Junior Grammar School forming numeric 70 to symbolize 70th year after the Holocaust in Lagos yesterday. Of course, that Holocaust didn't take place in Lagos. It was way back in, of course, Israel. Now, there are stories riding at the bottom there. Why we shown northeast by EU polls observers. President campaigns in Ondo and Rivers, and civil groups demand office seekers plan to protect human rights. That's the lead story on the front page of The Guardian. And leadership leads with the story, our campaigns are issues-based. This is attributed to PDP. It is on page 5. It writes with APC fears you to scuttle polls, writes police commissioner over Gombe crisis. And the picture story, national chairman of the All Progressive Congress, APC, Chief John Udige Oyegun, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, and Deputy National Chairman, Senator Lawal Shuaibu, during a visit to Atiku's residence in Abuja yesterday. Just above the masthead, on the right column there, CBN, we may cut forex support on rice importation and others. It's just there, and of course, just closely below that, you can find another caption. We've distributed 43 million PVCs. INEC, it's on page 4. That's the leadership. And quickly to the Daily Trust, and it leads with Jonathan, PDP blast Marku at Lafia rally. That was yesterday. And a picture story right at the bottom. Some residents of Munguno who fled their homes after Boko Haram attacks arriving in Maiduguri yesterday. And just above the masthead, after the headline story, you find other stories trending right there. And this one is on stock. How stock market regulators got 12 billion naira. Investors lost 1.7 trillion in 2014. And Nigeria heads for closest election on record. This is coming from a survey. You can see the details on page 4. And Vanguard leads with certificate saga, my documents with INEC. This is attributed to Buhari, says litigants will remain in court as lawyers drag him to court, accuse him of false claims. And again, the picture story following that lead story, children, refugees, they're raising their UNHCR wristbands in the United Nations Refugee Agency camp in Baga. That was, of course, on Monday. Now, trending at the bottom, we will overcome all challenges before elections, attributed to INEC Chairman Professor Atahiru Jega on page 8. Afenifere endorses Jonathan, it's on page 54. And that's just the front page, the outlook of the front page of the Vanguard. And finally, Daily Sun leads with Boko Haram unveils killed soldiers. Boko Haram unveils killed soldiers, and it writes with releases new video on military training. And that is followed by the picture. The killed soldiers at the Boko Haram training camp are shown in the video. Ohaneze, we won't allow sit-tight leadership. Obioha. Explosion rocks Enugu Secretariat, also trending at the bottom there. Now, no going back on PVC's use. Jega, again, APC alleges fresh plot to shift elections. And lastly, just below the masthead, Afenifere endorses Jonathan and why PDP remains best choice for Nigeria. And also just on top, just beside the masthead, certificate saga, not disturbed by a court case, Buhari. Fanny Kaudi denies manipulating Cambridge document. I'll return to Bayo.
Thank you, Claire. Well, let's go to Borno, where Governor Kashim Shettima was attempting to visit the soldiers that were wounded in the recent clash with insurgents in Maiduguri, Konduga, and Mongono. And online media are reporting, and newspapers are reporting that the governor was fired at. There has been disclaimer that it is not true. One of the disclaimers said that there was gunshot heard about a kilometer ahead, and the governor did make a detour and went back. Others are reporting that the governor actually went there, and the soldiers, in appreciating his contribution to the fight against insurgency, fired into the air, and it was a kind of fire of joy, and it was not targeted at His Excellency. Meanwhile, internally displaced persons have begun to arrive in Maiduguri. A woman, her name is Yagana Mohammed. She lost her husband and 2 children, and she said, "I prefer to die." Another insurgent by name Babagana Modu says that it is very agonizing that the people don't even allow the dead to be buried. And he says, out of anger, he says, "The fools are treating us worse than animals. Definitely, these people do not know God." Meanwhile, the Air Force and the soldiers, foot soldiers, are taking on the insurgents in Mongono, and it is reported that there are support coming in from the International Joint Task Force to subdue the insurgents. 2 days curfew has been imposed on Adamawa from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. This again is to prevent a security breach. Cities like Michika and Madagali, not too far from Adamawa, have come under recent attacks. People who are resident there say that villages like Lidl, Garta, Shahu, and Mbororo are some of the communities that the insurgents have attacked, and they always come in a cell like, they operate like cells. They come from their hideouts, come in a convoy of dozens, strike at those villages, and run back. And it is expected, too, that part of the measure is to prevent any outcome of this crisis or any attack following the pending visit of Mr. President to Adamawa. An improvised device maker has been apprehended in Potiskum. He was said to have been involved in making those explosive devices that were used in bombing locations in Maiduguri and Potiskum. We will recall that Science Secondary School was one of the places where students were killed with improvised devices. There was another that was apprehended using the tricycle machines. And this man had actually moved from Damaturu to settle in Potiskum, and he was disguising as a mason and a water seller, while actually he was the one manufacturing the explosives. Campaign is getting tense in Rivers State. All the Progressive Congress in Rivers are saying that electoral violence is a threat to democracy. In Rivers, it will be recalled that the first rally of the APC had people coming from Ogoni shot at on 2 occasions at Okreka. The secretariat of the party and also a party activity was shot at. The PDP supporters were also shot at in Rivers. But in all these instances, apparently, there have been no arrests whatsoever. And that is causing serious concern. And one of the concerns, again, is that sometimes venue for rally is becoming a matter of dispute. And therefore, the PDP campaign trail is expected in Rivers. And unless caution is taken, the venue can be another subject of conflict. You will recall that there was a meeting at the INEC headquarters, and although postponement of election was not on the agenda, it became a subject of contention, and the INEC officials had to sit and wait and watch in amazement. However, from the published list of the PVC as distributed by INEC, it shows that the Kaduna State has the highest, having had 87 of the PVCs distributed. 25 other states have 60% of the PVCs already distributed. The state with the least distribution is Ogun State. They have 36%. However, states like Borno, which for where distribution started very lately, have already registered 56% distribution. Adamawa has 79. Yobe has 67. These are the three states where the insurgency is highest. The FCT has 52, and Niger State, where some registration took place only last December, already has 62% of distribution. The critical issue with PVC is that they are available. If you have not collected yours, you are advised to go to the INEC Ward Office, and there are 8,808 of them around the nation to pick up the PVC. Without the PVC, you will not be able to vote. INEC has categorically said that to eliminate instances of rigging and malpractices, PVC is what will be used. If you have a TVC and you are hoping to use it for the election, INEC has categorically declared that PVC that will be used through card readers is what will be certified for election. Clear?
All right. Thank you very much, Bayo, for being keeping to time there for us. All right. This is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll take a short break, and again, just to remind you, we're looking at the role of the media in fostering free, fair, and credible election.
In 2013, John Obi Mikel of Chelsea Football Club and Super Eagles midfielder was crowned Nigeria's king of the pitch, and His Excellency Senator Leo Imoke, CON, football-friendly governor of the year. Who will be Nigeria's king of football? Matchmakers Consult International and Nigerian Television Authority, NTA, presents the Nigerian Pitch Awards 2014 and its Night of Honors. Who will dethrone Vincent Iyama as goalkeeper of the year? Can Emmanuel Emenike remain Nigeria's striker of the year? Will Kanu Pillars remain Nigeria's best club side? In 2013, you voted Super Eagles coach Stephen Keshi as coach of the year. Toyin Ibitoye, football journalist of the year TV. Adeojo Kere, football journalist of the year print. Bimbo Adeola, football journalist of the year radio. Chief Felix Anyansi, manager of the year. Guinness Nigeria PLC, best corporate sponsor of football of the year. And Lagos State, a state with the best grassroots football development program. Nigeria Pitch Awards, Nigeria's own football award.
200 megabyte gives me 5 days of BBM, WhatsApp, and Facebook. Wait, so is that true? What about Twitter? Facebook? What if it finishes when I'm using it? Why can't I just know how long my data will last?
Get data that lasts as long as you need with Smart Packs from Etisalat. Buy data in packs of your favorite apps and choose from the chat, social need to stay connected all day or all week. Dial *200# to try it now. Enjoy streaming all your favorite live matches all day, every day with the video pack.
Etisalat, now you're talking.
Pure premium quality granulated sugar. So sweet and delicious. It will make you even more. Pure finest quality vitamin A enriched sugar. Manufactured to the highest global standards. Just for your enjoyment. Pure sugar. How sweet it is.
Do you know? Your favorite Double Herbert toothpaste in a new look. Now endorsed by the Nigerian Dental Association.
It's brushing time.
Double Herbert toothpaste. Strong and shiny teeth. Naturally.
right, let's get on with our issue for this morning. Political campaigns are at their peak, and just as Bayo said earlier on, in some states, very tense. Now, just as the media are also scouting for news breaks, competition among them rife. Who breaks the news first? Whose headline is more interesting, captivating, or sensational? Now, in consideration of these interests, ethics of the profession are sometimes put behind the burner or neglected. Now, in the build-up to next month's election, the role of the media in fostering free, fair, credible, and transparent election continues to be of critical concern to Nigerians. Timothy Yusuf takes it up from here in this background report.
What the electorate believe and work with ultimately is dependent on information disseminated by the media. The society in this direction fails when the right message is not conveyed. Basically, in an electioneering period like this, before, during and after, political players and watchers are expected to adhere strictly to extant regulations on political reportage. Experts believe that media practitioners are to only deal with issues ranging from campaign manifestos to electioneering promises. They are as such expected to avoid negative reference to political opponents, avoidance of the use of foul or abusive language, as well as false, distorted or unsubstantiated claims or misrepresentations of facts capable of either inciting ethnic, religious or other sectional interests.
The media should be at the center stage of whatever is happening. One fundamental responsibility of the media in a political setting like this, in a democratic society, is for the media to take the responsibility of really enlightening people, promoting awareness, creating or engendering that kind of expected perception of what democracy should be.
Media as an agenda setter, as an educator, as an informer, in electioneering periods like this, are expected to be neutral in their reportage, not aligning to any of the political, the actors.
While Honorable Al-Hassan Ado Dogwa of the House of Representatives, who was a practicing journalist before going into politics, and some other political watchers say Nigerian media is gradually stabilizing in the attainment of objective political reportage, Ambassador Aisha Audu says they are yet to arrive at the desired destination.
That Nigerian media is really working hard, especially in terms of reportage during electoral process. You find them at every bit of it, right from the polling unit to the ward coalition level to the local government coalition level. Virtually, Nigerian election process is being well covered by Nigerian media. But I want to say, without any fear of contradiction, that there are a lot of limitations. These limitations are mostly coming from the background of non-funding.
I think the media is trying its best. The media is one of the cogs in the wheel to making sure that our election is done properly and takes off and we achieve what we want. I have been seeing some publications in the papers educating people on what is expected of the electorate, what is expected of INEC during the elections. I've seen programs that have been brought together by the television stations informing, very importantly, informing voters on how they will vote, informing voters on the importance of having a PVC.
Now, I believe that whoever is paying more is getting more attention. Whoever is having a better publicity or PR is having better attention. They're really not getting to the grassroots to tell the stories. Everything is more of the elite. It's more of the town hall meetings and the seminars, and I'm not feeling where they are testing what is really going on ground. And the opinion polls are very, very, mastermind. I don't think the media has put in its best in this election like it did in 2011. It was a bit more of a platform that can sell anywhere. But today I believe that the system is quite overheated and the media is being used to get this going. I believe they can still adjust. I believe they should do more work with the INEC. I believe they should do more of promoting free and fair elections.
In a time like this, in the nation's quest towards consolidating on its democracy, media practitioners, political players and watchers say should rather focus on issue-based politics by setting agenda for political office seekers. Only by that way, they can be reminded of their campaign promises and subsequently holding them accountable should they fail to deliver on their promises than assisting them to overheat the polity.
Okay, thank you very much there for that background report. Now we are kicking off our conversation. We have a number of guests this morning. There's our media practitioners as well as regulators to discuss this issue. But first, I would like to introduce with us here in the Abuja studios is Malam Ali M. Ali, Chief Operating Officer of People's Media. That's the publisher of People's Daily. Malam Ali, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning, Mr. Kingsley.
And joining us from Lagos Network Center, right there on the right-hand side of the split screen is Mr. Frank Agbogun. Mr. Frank Agbogun is publisher of Business Day newspaper. Of course, a veteran journalist. For many years, he was editor of Vanguard. He actually began his reportorial career during the Second Republic. Mr. Frank Agbogun, welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, let's begin with Ali M. Ali, publisher, sorry, the CEO of People's Media, of the People's Daily. There are concerns about the perspectives that we are seeing in the media with regard to their reportage as well as publication and broadcast of advertorials in respect of next month's general elections. In your opinion, how is the media, of course, for the benefit of some of our younger viewers, the word media can be used either in a singular or plural sense. So when you find that the Concord is shifting from east to R, don't be concerned. What, in your opinion, is the media, is the way the media is driving this year's election? Are you satisfied with it, or are you concerned?
Well, both actually, but more concerned than satisfied. Of course, there will be room for improvement in terms of first the coverage itself, the way the media covers the issues leading to the election, and concerned because of the alarming, the slant, if you like, the way you can almost say with certain amount of certain degree of certainty that certain media will go this way, certain media will go this way, for a number of reasons. Ownership matters, for instance, and then the political persuasion, and then even, if you like, advertorial influence. These are variables that ultimately influence content, and then broadcast, if you like. Really, we should be concerned. You know, these days of, you know, technology has changed a lot of things, especially with the new media. The traditional media, maybe over time, has been more circumspect in covering very passionate issues of, if you like, that are very dear to the heart. You know, religion, culture, and so on and so forth. But the traditional media, like I said, the more checks are embedded in traditional media as opposed to new media. These days, in the new media, everybody is a publisher, everybody is a broadcaster. And sometimes people go to town with stories that are not really authenticated. They're not real. They're not been, they've not gone through the filters. And then, in no time, they cause a lot of disaffection. There are so many examples. So it gives room for concern. And I think all the stakeholders, really, this is the time we apply the brakes in matters of content, adverts, and so on and so forth, really. But by and large, I would say the recipient of also media messages, some of them depending on the exposure to media content, depending also on the demographics, depending on the age. People like Mr. Osadolo, people of your generation, and then even lower, younger generation, depending on the recipient of these media messages, how they distill the information they receive, and which will ultimately influence their conduct or how they react to certain media messages. Even editorial content. People now, I've seen a lot of times people say, oh, this is certain medium. I'm not surprised. Don't you know the ownership? Don't you know the editorial influence? So they would dismiss it. But then there are other people who would, like they say, swallow everything, hook, line, and sinker. And then even they will be unreceptive to superior argument, to superior content. But I would say, yeah, the traditional media, by and large, has been a little bit more circumspect. But then the economics, like I said, the economics of, for instance, advertisement will determine sometimes which content to use or which to disregard.
Okay, let's get to Lagos, where Mr. Frank Aibogun is, publisher of Business Day. Just to ask, are there ambiguities in the responsibilities of the media, particularly during seasons like this? I mean, political seasons like this, because what we find right now is that every media out there is doing its own thing.
I think it has to be understood that we're dealing with two things here. First is the advertising communication that you see in the media, for which the journalism in the media is not responsible. And then, of course, the news stories that you see either on television, on radio, or in the newspapers. I think, in my view, we should not underrate the intelligence of the consumer of media service or media product. The ability of the consumer to make his own mind about what he sees in the newspapers or what he sees on television or hears on the radio. From beginning of time, you would have had situations where different people owned different outlets, and to some extent, that ownership shaped the kind of work that they did. But my view is, I mean, Kingsley had asked a question. I'm not satisfied with what the media is doing, but I am not concerned for the reason that I gave earlier, that the consumer is intelligent enough to make up his mind. And society is not monolithic. Different persuasions exist in society. And so whereas some people get irritated by some materials that they see or that they read, some other people, take considerable satisfaction in them as well.
Okay, but Mr. Aibogun, let's back up a bit. While we were introducing this morning's program, we did refer to examples of some African countries where media incitement, particularly in elections, has often led to violence and crisis, if not war. Of course, considering the high stakes that we're having in this year's election, which is the rationale for our taking a look at this topic. One area of concern for professionals, I understand what you're saying. What you're saying, okay, free marketplace of ideas, put out whatever you have, a discerning audience would pick and choose what to read. But again, we're also concerned about the gullible in our society. Are the gatekeepers failing? Some of the headlines you see, you wonder, a number of them will deal with defamation cases later. And usually the media have a way of not reporting cases involving them. But we are concerned about matters out there for public consumption. Where is the gatekeeper?
I think the point you made is quite relevant. As gatekeepers, we have a responsibility. And that responsibility is simple. It's like a guard that you put in front of your house. He has rules about who goes in and who is not let inside the house. And I think that applies to the media as well. And I think that the responsibility of journalists, for instance, to ensure that the freedom that they have and the freedom that they exercise within some kind of limits imposed on them by the responsibility arising from those privileges or those rights as well. And I mean, in some places you have some form of regulation that is imposed by the profession itself. And I think largely in Nigeria, that can be said to, to be what we've had here. No regulation by really any outside body, and the media itself has had that responsibility to regulate itself. I mean, don't forget, and I think you mentioned that already, the defamation laws are still there, the libel laws are still there, the courts are still there to test these things out. In the run-up to elections, especially hotly contested elections that it appears we're having this time, you would have, certain sections of the media go overboard. But I think there is sufficient mechanism in society to deal with this. If it's a marketplace, the market will reject, media outlets that are irresponsible. The court will impose massive fines or sanctions on media that go overboard. So that's why I said, whereas I'm not very satisfied by what I see, I am not concerned at all.
Sorry, I'm going to direct my question again to Mr. Ibokun before we get down to Malam Ali here. The media is guided strictly by ethics. We have the ethics of the profession, which among other things enjoins us to be free and fair in our reportage of issues. But now, in being fair, I ask, fair in whose interest? In the interest of the owner, in the interest of the nation, in the interest of the electorate?
In fairness, in journalism, you are referring to fairness to everyone concerned in a particular story or in a particular situation. And so that fairness is not narrow in its definition. It has to be a broad-based application of that fairness, in which case everyone that is involved in a particular story, everyone touched by a particular story must see that fairness has been exercised by the journalist. For instance, if you're dealing with a story, everyone you're reporting in the story, there must be a good attempt to ensure that their views are properly reflected in that story. That's one. Secondly, the consumer of that story must also be taken into account. So to that extent, I agree with the point that Kingsley has made about how it is that the media can sometimes be inflammatory in its reporting. But as I always tell people, not every patient who heads to the doctor comes back alive, and that has not led to shutting down of hospitals or getting doctors locked up. So the fact that we insist on that right, to our responsibility as gatekeepers, yes, mechanisms exist to ensure that those who abuse, just like you take away your guard if he lets into the house those you don't want. I think mechanisms exist to ensure that the media plays within the rules.
Okay, let's return to the Abuja studios. Ali Emali, again, I mean, you put it very aptly that there are economic considerations as well as political persuasions. Of course, political persuasion will arise from the issue of ownership and control. But let's put it this way. When should a media outlet begin to apply the brakes with regard to, shall we say, the reckless pursuit of its political persuasion?
Well, I think because of we are not agreed on certain issues. So certain issues are not settled. Like, for instance, people all the time, I'm just digressing slightly a bit, yes. The national interest. Most people, most Nigerians, I would say, or let's say, what is the national interest? If we agreed that certain things are settled, they're sacrosanct, then we can't violate this covenant, for instance. But then, most times, people define what is fair, what is national, subjectively. Now, at what point do you apply, like you said, the brakes? If some of these things are clearly defined, there are certain parameters which you cannot go beyond, settled. Like, I'll give an example with, well, I don't want to, but a publisher, such of a newspaper or a media organization. You know, ideally, yes, you want to, there are interests. Let's not kid ourselves, Mr. Osadolo. You know, there are interests. Somebody doesn't create something because he wants to give jobs. He may have political and economic interest. But then also, like I said, there are something that are settled. If we assume that these are certain issues, if you go outside these such lies where political interest lies. Because in the process of trying to project certain persuasions, certain consideration for material or for political reasons, chances are that you throw away the baby along with the bathwater. And then where does that get you? Where does that lead to? So it's important first, like this issue of gatekeeping and the gatekeepers themselves. How professional are they? I know there have been regulatory agencies, bodies, for instance, in saying who is even a journalist? Who is then the gatekeeper? Because journalism, the media, is a reflection of society. Everybody is there. Different persuasions, different professionals are involved in media work. But then this thing about fairness, about objectivity, about rising above your own sentiments, if you like. And these sentiments could be material or political, and even emotional. You know.
Okay, Malam Ali, I understand the perspective you've introduced, but I think that there is also in the media a clear recognition of, excuse me, please. There's a clear recognition of, you know, who a gatekeeper is. Basically, a gatekeeper is like a goalkeeper. But we also know that in the media, the gatekeeper is also like a striker. These are your editors who would lead you to say, these are the kind of stories you should bring. These are the kind of stories you should chase. Which now takes me to the next point, and I would like Mr. Agbogun to kick off with this. There have been concerns also about the fact that we are not having an issue-based electioneering season. Namely, the kind of stories that we have been seeing making the headlines on the front pages are somewhat trivial. What is the how? If you say you're going to deal with corruption, with the economy, what is the how? Why are editors not sending their reporters to chase after such stories? And demand those stories, you know, from the candidates who are presenting themselves for election.
Well, you were the Guardian, and I'm sure you will admit the rigor that went into the whole mix of getting news and getting news out to the people. And I think to a good extent, that rigor does exist still in the media. The media is not responsible for making news. The media is a mere outlet, it's a mere window to give vent to what people say. And if your subject or your principal, in this case, a politician or a political leader, is incapable or unable to bring up the issues, yes, a journalist in the case of either a press conference or whatever can follow up with questions and insist on those questions being answered. But I think it is not fair to hold the media responsible for what I will admit is a total absence of an issue-led debate in Nigeria today.
All right, let me also ask, because it's just in line with Kingsley's question. Again, what persuasions drive the casting of headlines? I pick up a newspaper today, and the headlines I see send cold shivers down the spine, you know, of people who read it. Now, that obviously will in no way help to grow our democracy.
Certainly.
I make the point again. I don't know what kind of newspapers you read, but if you read a newspaper today that you're totally
Frank, you know what I'm talking about.
Unsatisfied with or by, then I would imagine that if you go back consistently to that newspaper, then there must be some other things that you're looking for. So my view is allow the market to determine. Headlines sometimes are a reflection of the state of a society at any particular time. But there are always exceptions. And don't forget that there are newspapers who come or are set up in a run-up to elections and suddenly disappear after the elections. And we are left to go back to our sanity, and life goes on all over again. So don't be too concerned by what you see. This will pass, in my view.
Sorry, Mr. Ibrogo, I should be concerned. Because Ibrogo, those who carry out violence, for instance, or perpetrate violence, are not necessarily the people, like you said earlier, who are capable of, separating the good from the bad. These are very gullible, I beg to use the word, set of people who do that. So if you say it's a free market, what are we talking about? Maybe let our guest here. Yes.
Let's put it this way. Mr. Ibrogo is a graduate of mass communication. Malamale Emale is also a graduate of mass communication. You are both familiar with the hypodermic needle theory. Now, this is part of what Clay said. If you have a gullible audience out there, and you have this consistently screaming headlines without substance with regard to the issues, shouldn't we be concerned? Where are the gatekeepers?
Yeah, yes. Well, I think, you see, coming about these theories of mass communication, sometimes some cynics will say, okay, if at all people are influenced by what they receive, media messages, then probably all of us, our kids should be up in arms all the time because they watch these violent movies, for instance, with messages. And then recently there's been this very apt why our young generation are the way they are. They are watching Tarzan, is always in lion cloth, lives in the jungle. Superman is, so these images, how come Spider-Man, how much influence these images have on the younger generation, really. But having said that, this issue about headlines is very key here, because what all newspapers do every morning is literally to stage a beauty contest. They struck down the walkway, or what do you call it?
The news star.
Precisely.
Yes.
And then people normally, aesthetics, the more sensational the headline, the more likelihood that the consumers will buy. Now, with the coming of the new media, I think the influence of that has been diluted, so to say. But then how authentic? Sometimes in the traditional media, when you see screaming headline, I would say a lot of factors. Same story, but then treated differently. Instances where, well, depending on which side of the divide, some will see the glass as half full, some will see it as half empty, the optimist. But then saying the same thing. Now, you have instances where any slight error in the headline, I will give you an instance. It happened in one of the West African countries in the wake of, the post-independent West Africa. There was a mistake in the casting of headline. They wanted to say the immortal. Then the T dropped, and then it turned out to be the immoral. You understand? And then the editors fled that country. They fled. Because at that time, the leader that they thought was an emancipator was assuming the toga of a dictator. Intolerant. But then the body of the story, you can see that clashes with the headline because of that fatal error. Now, in casting headlines, a lot of issues come to play. As an editor myself, you look at what will make you stand out. Instances where editors will interpret that danger of interpretative journalism. Do you do straight line, let the facts do the talking, or do you stretch it so that you cast a headline that will capture just about everything in one single shot? And more often than not, people are attracted to buy newspapers more by the sensational headlines, and sometimes by the image they see there. And that's why you see in some newspapers, you see always, invariably, there will be present image until one economics again determine front page images. There are instances where even for instance, this wrap-around thing is determined by economics. When you were editor, there was nothing like wrap-around.
No, I wish we had wrap-arounds at that time.
So really clear, like we said, so many variables come to play in casting headlines. And like Mr. Agbe once stated, that they are also seasonal newspapers. They come, they open shop after the season is over, and then they disappear. But then, over time, this is a question of the Darwinian philosophy, the survival of the fittest. Yes. Yeah, this is the way I say it about headlines. Really, every morning they come, they do their beauty contest. The one that has the most sensational headline, because people really, and then again, the gatekeepers also, we are also missing our calling sometimes. This thing about developmental journalism, and this thing about investigative journalism.
That's right.
This thing about, like, journalism, like they say, we are historians in a hurry. We are capturing history. Sometimes historians, when they make their research, they refer to newspapers as one of their sources of research. But then we are not circumspect. Sometimes, like we said, we are very sensational. And then instances where the headline clashes with the content.
Yeah, Malam Ali, before my colleague signs you off, Mr. Ibogun at the Lagos Network Center has emphasized the discipline of the market. Then we have also now talked about some of the lapses in gatekeeping. Well, for the benefit of our viewers, the discipline of the market is not something that you witness directly. This is how the discipline comes. If the market rejects you, your unsold copies will mount, which costs are rising and your revenue is, and after a while you will be out of business. More concerned because of the impressionable population that we have in the country, and the need for us to, of course, safeguard the country.
Yes, and Mr. Ibogun, if this is the perception, I'm wondering, should politicians and indeed the umpire INEC, should they be blamed in the outcome of a contrary outcome of an election?
Don't get me wrong. I have not, as it were, sanctioned some of the abuses that I see in the media. But I am just very careful that we protect a very key part of our life as a free society, and would rather not pursue a path that ultimately leads to a situation where some 3, 4, or 5 people in a smoke-filled room begin to determine what you and I see on television, hear on radio, or read from the newspapers. We know that in our past, there was a time when that indeed was the case. I'm quite careful. And I don't think, and I also think we should be mindful of the fact that social media has democratized access and use of the media already. So we can all sit down and talk here about a handful of journalists in a handful of newspapers. But everyone today with a phone or any such device is a journalist or a broadcaster or a radio person. So I think that's going on. I think society has to be careful. Society has to be alert. Society has to watch what institutions like the media, what they do, and must always find a way to ensure that the media serves of building society, ensuring cohesion in society, rather than tearing apart society. And I think we all must frown at any journalist or any media outlet that, because of either economic consideration or because of political lineage, pursues this route that brings about commotion simply because of a political contest. So I think that the society has to be alert, and society has to have a way of sanctioning outlets or media people who, as I said, go overboard. That's my view. I don't think it's a question of whether it's INEC or whether it's journalists. It has to be clear where a journalist has misbehaved, and I think, as I said, mechanisms do exist to ensure that anyone that does misbehave is brought to order.
All right, Mr. Frank Aibogun, publisher, Business Day, thank you very much for putting that last response into context. And we do thank you for obliging us on Good Morning Nigeria. All right, back here in Abuja, we would also like to thank Malam Ali Ali, of course, CEO of People's Media and publisher of People's Daily. Thank you very much, sir, for finding time to join us.
Thank you.
This is Good Morning Nigeria. We'll go on a very short break. We'll be back.
The Ministry of Health team is visiting schools to teach children how to protect themselves from diseases.
Do you know what germs are? They are tiny, harmful, living things that you pick up from dirty surfaces. These germs can make you ill and prevent you from doing all the things you like to do with friends. That's why you need to fight them by washing your hands regularly with Dettol soap.
Mom, today we learned how to fight germs with Dettol soap.
Shirt needs some whitening? Just use a little Jiffy soap water. With Jig Pot Puree and Lemon, your cleaning troubles are over. Is there a dirty floor stain that's frightening? Or a muddy mess left by your daughter? Is your stove no longer so shiny? Or your bra as dirty as ever? Just Jiggies! Pot Puree and Lemon. Just Jiggies! It makes cleaning a joy. Just Jiggies!
Hey, you better go get
Just Jiggies! Now available in lemon and pot puree fragrances, the newest and freshest way to jig it.
Even family fun time is no sweat at all. That's because I use Dettol Re-Energize. It protects me and my family from everyday germs. With bursts of orange citrus, I end my day the way I started. Re-Energize.
I bet you can touch your nose with your thumb.
A nose?
It's the same with your toilet. There are many places in your toilet that detergents cannot clean. That is why the new Harpic 5 times Complete gives you 5 times better cleaning than detergent from the rim all the way to the U-bend, making your toilet completely clean. With Harpic 5 times Complete, you will definitely reach all the hard-to-clean places in your toilet.
Harpic Power Plus. Buy now for only 350 Naira.
Do you know that you are exposed to up to 100 illness-causing germs every day?
I encourage my kids to learn new things. And if they get hurt, I rely on my Dettol to fight germs. It's like my own first aid kit.
My family needs protection from germs. My Dettol disinfects surfaces and clothes, keeping them clean and safe from germs.
All right, we thank you for rejoining us. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria live on the network service of the NTA. We still have a guest in Lagos talking about Mr. Frank Aibogun, publisher, Business Day. And okay, I'm told that we're expecting also a veteran journalist, Mr. Dele Cole, who will also be joining us live from Lagos. But for now, we'll quickly introduce our next guest here in Abuja. And we have Alhaji Garba Kankarofi, Registrar, Chief Executive Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria, APCON. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us.
Thank you very much, Claire.
All right. And we also have right here in the studio, Dr. Oji Ogbonnaya Oji, also a veteran journalist, and of course, he's the spokesman for NTA. Thank you, Mr. Oji. Thank you very
much. Okay, let's begin with. I would like us to pause Alhaji Kankarofi in the meantime. He's a regulator, and go to Dr. Ogbonnaya Oji, himself a veteran broadcaster. Dr. Oji, what are you seeing in the lead up to this year's elections in terms of broadcast media performance?
Well, thank you very much, Kesley, for this platform. And I would like to say that so far, so good. We've done fairly well. There are still a lot of room for improvement. For the radio and television, I think we've done fairly well. A couple of days ago, I had a reason to send a text to the DG of the NTA when I was watching the news on one of the 9 o'clock news on one of the days, and I was quite encouraged the way that there was a spirited effort to give space to all the contending political parties. And I had a reason to just send him a text to encourage him, and I said in that text that it was a very bold, courageous decision by the NTA editorial board, editorial room, to be able to allow all the political parties equal space, measurable space, to air their views. And particularly there was almost on a daily basis every opportunity for all the parties to even make statements. I think that is very innovative, and I think that should be encouraged. Sitting here, I was listening to Frank Aibogo and my good friend Ali, as they were making every effort to draw attention to issues of media violence. And I think this is very fundamental, and I think this is very, very innovative for you to have allowed this to become a very important issue to be discussed today, because some of us are also getting very worried. You see, when stories are not balanced, it's already violence against the segment of society that feels shortchanged. That's violence on its own. When we use images that create a lot of fear and anxiety in the minds of people, that is violence on its own. Cartoons and the kind of viral messages, very aggressive messages that we get on the social media, when we put ethnic issues and issues that have to do with religion, very sensitive issues, as sensitive as religion and ethnic issues, as the front burner, that is violence on its own. When we attend campaigns and we leave the issues and be chasing some side attractions that tend to create opportunities for some segments of the society to begin to seek for opportunities for revenge. That to me is violence. And these are issues that we in the media must be very sensitive about. A couple of weeks ago, the political parties signed an accord in Abuja. And I was saying, my God, how I wish the media is included in that accord. Because the source of this violence has to come from the content of the message and how the public react to that message. And these are my initial comments, Kingsley. And I do think that this kind of conversation needs to happen now, and it needs to be sustained, because this is very key. As we all hold our hearts in our hands, as what will happen in the next election, this coming couple of days as the election approaches, we need to be very careful and exercise a lot of restraint in the kind of information that we put out, knowing very well that it is the media that sets the message, sets the agenda of what happens and what will happen next.
Okay. Exactly.
Let's take Alhaji Karufi, Registrar of APCON. Sometime last week or the week before, you had to take out advert space in several newspapers to restate the policy of APCON that frowns at certain kinds of political adverts that are either insulting, inflammatory, just plain insensitive. Now, obviously, that concern or that step arose from your observation that there are violations of your codes. Now, what is the scale of violation, and what steps have you taken to remedy this?
Thank you. Kingsley, sometimes when you ask questions, you need probably a whole thesis to answer. I think for the benefit of the listeners and the viewers, it is important to understand what are we even talking about. In the first instance, the role of APCON is statutory. It's backed by law, as you do know that. And as a legal luminary yourself, you know that every profession, whether journalism, whether broadcasting, whether advertising, there are rules of engagement. I'm very delighted. I wish Frank is still on the Lagos line, and Emali. It gives you a clear statement that, look, even among the newspapers, there are some who diligently, follow the rules of engagement. But there are some, for reasons of maybe marketing, they want to recoup maybe the bank loan they have taken here and there, and so they can just do anything. Vetting is an essential commodity not only in politics, but even in products. The media, whether print or electronic, particularly radio and TV, there is no radio station in this country, there is no newspaper in this country who is not aware of what APCON is, what we stand, because the NBC law has captured our role clearly in Chapter 7 and 8, that no advertisement in Nigeria, within Nigerian territory, should be aired without vetting. What is vetting? Vetting means that everything that must go on air, radio, TV, newspaper, including posters, must be legal, honest, decent, and socially responsible, and must take care of people's sensibilities. We clear alcohol adverts, but you don't go to Kano to air that advert. It's not possible. So which means there is self-regulation, there is statutory regulation. This is the role we're talking about. There is a law, there is a code. NBC has a code. APCON has a code. CPC has a code. NCC has a code. There are rules of engagement, and these codes were developed over time. APCON has reviewed 5 times to take care of new current issues in the society. Now, coming back to your question, like I said during my last appearance on this, I'm very delighted and to see even Frank, because Frank is a publisher. People's Daily is a publisher. Daily trust their publishers. They don't breach the rules. But there are some who believe that they're bigger or mightier than the nation, believe that they're into business, and so nobody can control them. That is why, like I said the other time, 3 years now, from 2011, we're in court. We wanted to enforce the law as given to us by the government. But people believe that they know somebody much higher than you, so they can do whatever they like and then report you to your boss. So, and I think in the spirit of why we're established, we are there to defend the country, to defend the consumer, to defend our nation, to defend our children, our great-grandchildren.
So the council is helpless?
It's not helpless. We may be helpless in a way because the court process takes longer time. 3 years, but can you consider the Nigerian Press Council that is in court for 15 years? So 3 for APCON to me is, and it came about because of the infringements in 2011 elections. I'm very, very proud to sit here and tell you that the 2011 president of the country followed every due process. All the political parties and their presidential aspirants in 2011 followed due process. They vetted their adverts, including governors, including senators. I can understand the polity is heating up. It's becoming more competitive, even among the politicians. There is no political party in this country that we are not written to. We held a public forum with INEC and NBC to sensitize politicians and media houses. There's no media house in this country, whether private or publicly owned, that is not aware of the APCON law and the NBC law. Because for you to have a license, there must be an NBC law and the code. But I was so happy right from the time you started your sensitivity of the public to have them, is media doing what they're supposed to do. And I had very, very encouraging remarks this morning through your reports this morning. Frank has spoken, and although he spoke being a very intelligent person, he's been very careful how he said things because he doesn't sound like his colleagues. But the truth of the matter is these breaches, and I'm very, very happy with the intervention of my ministry and a couple of people. Now NTA does no breach. Now AIT does no breach. So I'm very happy with that. So there is ultimate awareness. My publication and my letters to all the media houses, including every day you breach, we write your query. It's there because someday the court process will be there and we'll produce this as evidence of your breaches.
Okay, just before Kingsley introduces our next guest in Lagos, right. I'd just like to ask, in the past couple of weeks, we've seen people take up advertorials on the front pages, inside pages, that offend to a great extent people's sensibilities. Now, your council, does it have any restraining measures, apart from going to court or taking up advertorial, appealing to these people? Do you have any measures that can, refrain people or deter others from doing the same? Because it's happening.
Yes, Claire, what we did as council was not only to publish our feelings, what the law says. But we have written to individual newspaper houses and radio houses.
What's their response?
Well, so far they yet to, because the thing just happened recently. Kingsley raised two issues about editorial policy and the gatekeeping policy. Clearly, I have been in broadcasting myself for 33 years. I have served in military and I have served at the federal level. Never in the history of this country have I seen laws being broken with impunity like this current period of time. And I feel concerned. We have our seniors in the business, those who groomed us are still alive. Dr. Khalid is still alive, Muhammad Ibrahim is still like the former DGNT, most of them are around. And you know, as I do know, first in the morning when you make a mistake, your general manager or your controller will be by the studio, even if you read any grammar incorrectly. Unfortunately, these days, the gatekeeping process has been left in the hands of either mediocres, people who are not very well qualified to be there, because Emily has said, all gatekeepers must have a sense of feeling. There is a code of conduct. I believe going back to Kingsley's time, being a lawyer and being an editor, being a writer, he knows the rule of engagement. When you bring advice to the newspaper, they see what could take that newspaper to court. And he will tell the publisher, don't do this. Right now, Claire, we're talking to the media.
And the kind of penchant for sensationalizing matters which really ought not to be sensationalized.
Okay, so sometimes revisions of the ethics,
the result is that you do not have that interchange between public-spirited people who want to go in and make a change. And you will be surprised that in 1999, most of the politicians did not know what their manifesto said. And this included ministers, included all kinds of people, and you had to keep reminding them. Now, the classical setup is that the politicians or the parties set up a manifesto, they speak towards it, and they drive the electorate towards that manifesto. Now, at the end of it, if Party A has won the election, the role of the civil servant is to take that manifesto, break it up into its parts, and provide workable solutions. The same taking you so long to be able to achieve this particular objective. And I'm afraid that unless you place the politician that you are talking to in some kind of not uncomfortable, but at least you are direct in asking him a direct question, so that next time he does his homework before coming to talk to you.
Okay, getting back to Dr. Ogbonnaya Orji, I would like you to respond to my earlier question to Dr. Patrick Koo on the, some of the responsibilities, of the media. Of course, specifically that of providing a level playing ground for all political parties. But the media also, have its own challenges. For instance, remuneration. Some journalists, for instance, are not properly paid. Some are not even paid. Some are just engaged as casuals. They just get, their ID cards, and you go out there and see whatever you get. Whatever you get, you bring back, just give us the report. That's the practice out there. That's the reality out there, Dr. Ogbonnaya Orji. I'm sure you're also aware of that.
Well, those are challenges, quite frankly, but I do not think that there are challenges enough to really undermine our sense of judgment. I think the issue of we in the media trying to really organize ourselves properly, to be in a position to really take out the issues to the public domain, be able to set the right agenda for the politicians to really follow, has become extremely urgent. I do think that when we're looking at when we look at the campaigns that are going on, and the earlier observation you made that sometimes it is also not possible for the reporters to really do exactly the kind of, bring out the kind of message that will be able to influence behaviors. You see that the campaigns so far will become very boring for a reporter who has been traveling from one state to the other, and in every state the same message. In every state the same message on both parties. The messages are not changing. And I do recall that one of my bits while I was practicing was reporting, and I reported the June 12th election, and I do remember that I was attached to the Social Democratic Party at that time, and we were traveling from state to state. I think after 4 states, we were compelled to, all the 12 reporters attached to late Chief MKO Abiola at that time, we were compelled to, I think it was in Gigia Hotel in Sokoto, that we felt that we had no stories, we were running out of stories, and that we had nothing more to report. And we cannot, on our own, originate stories without his consent. We felt that he was repeating the same message every day. And we went to him in his hotel room, and he thought we came for a press conference. We were very angry, and we said, Chief, sir, we are getting bored on this campaign, and we don't have stories to report. Everywhere you go, you repeat the same thing. Everywhere you go, you repeat the same thing. And when we send the same story to our editors in Lagos, they will begin to wonder if we're actually on this campaign. Is there no way we can change the message? Chief Abiola laughed and asked us to go and to help him articulate the issues. And we felt it was not really our job to articulate it. His team needed to do that. Why am I bringing up this issue? Because when we watch the campaign so far, everywhere most of the parties are repeating the same thing. What they said in Benue will be the same thing they say in Nasarawa, will be the same thing they are going to say in Adamawa State. And each state has its own peculiar challenges and problems that we do think that their handlers need to understand and be able to draft a very peculiar message that will enable the presidential candidates understand what to say. If they are in Enugu, the problem in Enugu cannot be the same problem we have in Kano. And so when this happens, the reporter is able to report accurately and be able to give fresh angles to stories. And what this helps is that it diverts the attention of the reporter from reporting negativities that tend to now override the issues that are actually supposed to dominate the campaign. But the way to go is for the media houses to also look at the quality of reporters they send to cover certain bits. Like you rightly observe, a reporter that is not very well equipped, very well exposed, just very young in the profession, is not in any position to really be exposed to that kind of assignment at this moment. So editorial rooms need to sit down to evaluate the kind of political reporters that are following up in the campaign and be able to know if they are really rugged enough and suitable, exposed enough, and professionally equipped to be able to handle the campaigns. Secondly, I think our house styles, our editorial boards need to also look at what exactly do we want as a media house to report in this campaign, and who should we be in a position to drive that message.
We're pressed for time always when you have such brilliant guests, as we always do on this program. I would like to ask Alhaji Kankarofi APCON, in terms of responsibility for advertising that gets aired or that gets published. Now, Frank Agbogu made the point, and it's a clear one, that the journalist is not responsible for the adverts. The editor who signs the paper, of course, has administrative and legal responsibilities, but we know that the editor doesn't necessarily see the advert before it is published. What about the advert executives, the controllers of the advert departments? They are members of APCON. I mean, so can't responsibility attach to them for vetting those adverts in the first instance, and then if anything goes wrong, you take them off, because you can't go to a journalist?
I don't know. Excuse me. Kingsley are a genius, and I will tell you why. While Dr. Oji was speaking, what really came to my mind was that already APCON has seen the loophole. We realize that even though we have lawyers in the media, some of them are members. They are our licensees. They are the people who issue licenses too. What is very critical, and for people to understand, all advert executives are licensed by APCON, whether in the radio, TV, newspaper, in all media houses. And therefore, they owe us a duty. And part of their oath of office is to say that things, they will not get involved with all these kind of negativities that we were involved if you look at the oath of office. What we have now realized what to do, we went to court because publishers believe that even though our licensees are attached to them, and by law, nobody, a radio, TV, newspaper should hold that position without being licensed by APCON. That is why there is this wrong perception that perhaps because AAAN, who are the main people in advertising, they're not APCON. They are only one sectoral group out of 8 that we regulate. We are not professional. We are regulators like NBC, like NCC. Now, what do we intend to do and what are we doing now? All these breaches, we normally write to the head of advert department in the newspaper houses or the commercial manager, somebody that we know, or the head of scheduling department in the radio or TV houses to query him. They say, why did you, because you have sworn not to allow this negative adverts to come, not only politics, but all the products. No product should be advertised without ASP approval. But unfortunately, the newspaper houses, the publishers, saw in that. So in order to slow us down, they took us to court, that we have no mandate. And the court said, no, we have a mandate because they are licensees. Right. So what we are doing now, Claire, is to tell you, immediately after this election, we had an experience in 2011. And happily, this year there are more compliance if you look at the 2011 election. But this time around, we had more trouble. We have more trouble in 2015, Claire.
I'm afraid I have to stop you, Alaji.
Okay,
yes.
Give me 1 minute to summarize. In essence, what APCON is going to do, all licenses who breached, of course, there are legal instruments to it. Because we take them before APIP, my legal numerator here, what the advertising practitioners investigative panel, and then they will go to APDC, Advertising Disciplinary Committee, to look at this issue. So by 2019, God willing, certain things will not happen like that.
I'd like to thank you very much for your perspective.
Thank you,
Alhaji Bello Kankarefe is Registrar Chief Executive, Advertising Practitioners Council of Nigeria, APCON. Thank you. We also like to thank Dr. Ogbonnaya Oji, a veteran journalist. Of course, he also worked with the Federal Radio Corporation of Nigeria, was on the political desk and covered several electoral elections in Nigeria. Dr. Ogbonnaya Oji, thank you very much. And just as a way of information, if you listen to the president's campaign in Kwara State, that I can tell you, I know that he addressed the issues that affect Kwara youths. If you listen to his message in Nasarawa, he also talked about what he's going to do concerning solid minerals, and that I think these are areas that are quite relevant to those people in those states, just to let you know. And of course, we say a very big thank you to Dr. Patrick Dele Cole, who had to get up very, very early this morning to join us. And we do appreciate you, sir. Thank you very much, and do have a wonderful day. Good day. All right, Kingsley, I guess this is where we say our goodbyes. It's almost top of the hour. It's almost 9 o'clock. We hope you find time to join us again same time tomorrow. Tomorrow's edition is a must-watch. I promise you. I am Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak.
And I am Kingsley Osadala. My pleasure being here today on Good Morning Nigeria. The program, as Claire said, returns tomorrow at 7 o'clock in the morning. So have a nice day.
Eve, 6:30 a.m. to 9 a.m. every Saturday and Sunday. Africa's biggest deal.